I recently got off of one of Carnival's newest cruise ships, the Carnival Venezia, for a 9 day cruise to the Bahamas out of New York City. It was filled with swimming pigs, great food, a Carnival cruise first for this ship, a power outage, a rescue at sea, and one of the most chaotic embarkation ports I've ever been to. For such a new ship, it concerned me that the Carnival Venezia is rated just 2.5 stars on TripAdvisor, and I wondered if maybe I had made a mistake in booking Carnival Fun Italian style. This ship was originally built for Carnival's Italian branded Costa Cruises, having debuted in 2019 as the Costa Venezia, but due to the cruising shutdown globally just a few months later, the Venezia sat unoccupied until Carnival decided to repurpose her for the American market, replacing Costa verbiage with Carnival, thus turning this ship into the Carnival Venezia, relaunching it in 2023. This relaunch was part of a larger strategy to boost domestic American capacity after the Carnival Corporation had sold numerous older vessels, while Costa contended with operational challenges in its core markets. The Venezia's sister ship, the Firenze, has also been repurposed as a Carnival asset and is being sent to Carnival's Southern California hub of Long Beach in 2024. When the ship transferred from Costa to Carnival branding, Carnival also swept through the ship to install signature favorites like Guy's Burger, Cherry on Top Candy Store, a twist on the Blue Iguana Cantina, renamed Tomodoro, and added other locations that Carnival fans have come to know and love, like Java Blue Cafe and the Seafood Shack. But one thing Carnival chose not to change about this transplant of a ship was the smokestack design, opting to forego the iconic Carnival whale tail design and instead retaining the Costa Sea logo with Carnival references along the hull and base of the ship instead. My journey started on a red-eye flight from Los Angeles International Airport to New York's JFK. And due to a medical emergency on board right before takeoff, we were delayed getting to New York for another hour and a half. It's often recommended that you never fly into a cruise embarkation the same day, just in case something like this was to happen, but I knew the red eye would still get me to New York City with plenty of padding, just in case, and was a risk I was willing to take. Upon arrival to New York, it was a cloudy and drizzly morning, but that didn't dampen my spirit because I had booked a stunning stretch limousine to be my transport from JFK to the cruise terminal in Manhattan, and I couldn't wait to live out my childhood dreams of rolling like Kevin McAllister from Home Alone 2 through the streets of New York. You might think this was a waste of money, but truth be told, when comparing the rate to that of a Lyft or an Uber for the same distance, I was quite surprised at just how little a price difference there was. Even with tip included, the ride was just $85 more than what I got quoted by Rideshare on the way back, and it was a whole lot more comfortable and fun. Plus, Cruise Day is always a day worth celebrating if you can afford it, and I am all about living my best solo cruise life. It was a Saturday morning, so traffic wasn't all that bad, and we reached Manhattan's Pier 88 in record time. Because it was raining harder at this point, and my driver was having a hard time getting me close enough so that I wouldn't get too wet, he said he would take us around the block a few times until he saw an opening, which I really appreciated. What I saw when I finally stepped out of the car was a chaotic scene. New York's Pier 88 does not have much room to work with, and as thousands of passengers were disembarking and trying to stay out of the rain, they were being yelled at by Port Authority staff to keep moving and not to block the area where embarking passengers were trying to arrive. Across the street were dozens of cab drivers who were shouting at passengers, trying to persuade them to ride in their cab while drop-off traffic stretched for miles. The whole scene felt like it was out of a movie and very much lived up to the stereotype of New York City. On this pier, you have to take a massive elevator up a level to get to the terminal, and I was hollered at by a pier worker who thought I was debarking and tried to get me into the crowd with the rest of the debarking group. I had to explain to him that I was in fact embarking and was arriving for the first time. After explaining he turned his attention to yell at other people. Fortunately, even with the airline delay, I was still ahead of schedule and made it into the terminal at 9:45 a.m. In fact, they hadn't even opened security screening yet, and the handful of passengers that were up there with me were in a holding area. About 10 minutes later, security processing began, which moved quickly. I only waited a few more minutes to be checked in by a Carnival agent who told me to have a great cruise. The terminal itself was warm, if not a little cramped, as thousands began to arrive in the next hour. A little after 11 a.m., they began the boarding process. I stepped onto the Carnival Venezia at 11:38 a.m. Immediately, I was taken by just how much more elegant and artistic this ship was, and it was clear from the start that this was most definitely an Italian ship. The Carnival Venezia is a Vista-class ship, which means it was designed following a similar pattern and layout to other vessels of the same class. I was pleased to realize this was a Vista-class ship because a Carnival ship I frequent back in Los Angeles has a near identical layout that instantly helped me get my bearings. I was also excited to hear a familiar voice overhead, as the cruise director filling in for my trip was also a cruise director I had had on the California ship. Cruise director Joey Boys was there taking care of things, and I couldn't be more happy. He let us know that our rooms were not ready yet and to go ahead and explore. Knowing the traditional buffet would have been just inundated on embarkation day, as it is on any ship I've ever been on, and since I knew the layout of this ship, I went to one of my favorite included spots for lunch, Guy's Pig and Anchor Barbecue Buffet, which is only available on embarkation and sea days on the outskirts of Deck 5. What surprised me most was while the buffet was in the right place, it was not Guy Fieri's location. Instead, it was rebranded La Strada Grill, and while it had many of the same menu items I'd find at Pig and Anchor, it also included some Italian options like the Meatball Hero. This was the first of many Italian infusions I would come to find on board. Deck 5 is packed full of public spaces like the Carnival Bar and Lounge, Pixel's Photo Gallery, Frizzante Bar, specialty dining like Il Viaggio, Bonsai Sushi, Bonsai Teppanyaki just across from that, Fahrenheit 555 alongside of it, the Piano Bar, one of two levels of fun shops off the main atrium, and of course, one of two entrances to the Teatro Rosso, the main theater for the ship. Plus, it had some of the most outside seating space that was readily available anywhere on board. After loading up my plate full of the fantastic comfort food, I grabbed a table inside the nearby gondola lounge due to the wet and cold conditions outside. I must insist, for a relaxing start to a cruise on the Venezia, come here if you are waiting for your room to become available. It was so quiet and the space was beautiful. No lines, no crowds, no fighting to get a table like what often happens on the Lido deck during days like these. Don't follow the crowd. You are solo for a reason. Chart your own course. Speaking of the Lido deck, it was radically different on this ship from what I was expecting based on my experience with its sister ship, the Panorama. This ship was originally created with the intention of it serving the Asian cruise market and was designed with that in mind. So while the Lido deck is gorgeous and has so much charm to it, it prioritizes covered, shaded spaces over wide, open exposure to the sun. The Lido deck is covered by a retractable roof, which on a rainy embarkation day helped out a great deal, and the main pool is rather small by other Vista-class ship standards. When the roof was in place over the Lido, it often got humid and warm, with only a handful of windows along the sides of the spaces to offer airflow. I did appreciate the substantial places for people to sit and play games and watch the ocean roll by, but given the fact that it was always a beehive of activity, I rarely hung out on the Lido deck. While I was finishing up my lunch back on Deck 5, it was announced that our staterooms were ready. I was excited and couldn't wait to see what my stateroom looked like for the first time. I headed up one floor to Deck 6 and to stateroom 6431 near the aft end of the ship. This was a balcony room, and I will share what the total cost of this was near the end of the video. Inside, I was delighted by the calming colors and really impressed by the large amount of storage from a clothes hanging perspective and drawers in general. It took up almost an entire wall, which was great to see. And to actually having a shower door in the bathroom, that is something I almost never see on Carnival, but was a pleasant surprise here. All of the countertops had a faux marble look to them. The mirror fixtures, both in the bathroom and in the cabin, added a regal touch to the space. The room also had a couch that could transform into a bed if needed, and a small table that was also covered in faux marble. The safe was built into one of the storage cabinets and offered enough space for maybe a small laptop or a tablet. The living space counter had two USB outlets, American market power outlets, and one Asian market power outlet. There was also a hair dryer and a drawer underneath the counter, and a refrigerator. Instead of opting for a drinks package, I ordered a 12-pack of Diet Pepsi and a 24-pack of water on this cruise, all of which was waiting for me when I walked in the door. A small vanity stool was also under this counter. There were lamps and small storage spaces on either side of the bed, and the Italian cityscape artwork on the wall directly behind the bed helped to set this stateroom apart from other Vista class ships I had previously been on. A flat screen TV was positioned directly in front of the bed, and most importantly, on the window side of the bed, there were two USB ports in the wall. Why two on one side instead of one on each, I'm not sure, but it worked for me as a solo and was extra convenient. The wall between the bed and the balcony had a picture window and a standalone door with a handy lock near the top of the door for anyone who may have little ones sailing with them. Two pull curtains are on either side of this wall, and outside there are two reclinable chairs with a small drink table in between. The balcony is similar in size to most new cruise ships nowadays, and I would often turn my chair to the side in order to stretch out on sunny days. Directly beneath this balcony was an awning that ran the length of Deck 5, and aside from some distant music on the speakers being played around the clock on that level early in the morning, I never heard any conversations or loud noise when outside, and this area that stuck out a little further was the only space where other passengers could see me on the balcony, and to me it was a non-issue. I ended up loving my room placement. I was steps away from the staircase and one floor away from all of the dining, drinks, entertainment, and secluded open deck space I could want. In fact, I spent most of my time on Deck 5 hanging out because it was so convenient. But with that convenience also came one setback, and that was being in a room directly above the gondola lounge. A place for things like trivia and games during the day, but at night, this would turn into a performance venue, and the band would be bumping until at least midnight. You could hear the reverb and beats from the room, so that is something to definitely take into account. But I fall asleep to the sounds of podcasts anyway, so I was okay with it. If you need total silence to knock out, though, then you might want to steer clear of this room. As the rain continued to pour, it was announced that the sail away party would begin under the closed Lido deck, but I decided to skip sail away. It was getting dark after all, and the clouds were obstructing the Manhattan skyline, so kind of defeated the purpose of watching a sail away, and instead treat myself to my first specialty dining venue of the cruise, and that was dinner at Fahrenheit 555 Steakhouse. I'd heard a rumor that on embarkation day, Carnival provides you a complimentary bottle of wine if you dine at the steakhouse, and I wanted to see if that were true. Something I enjoy doing to kick off most cruises is to dine in a specialty restaurant on night one to celebrate. Plus, you can almost always find a table on embarkation day, as it seems most passengers don't venture into specialty dining until later in the cruise. This was the case here, and I booked via the Carnival app on my phone just an hour before the first seating. The service, ambiance, food quality, and taste were exceptional. And yes, I did receive a complimentary bottle of wine as an embarkation day parting gift. My specialty steakhouse meal was $48 flat. I would go on to have dinner again in the steakhouse on my final night, as well as in Il Viaggio, the high end Italian specialty restaurant, for the cost of $42 flat. This atmosphere was even more relaxed and quiet. On other Carnival ships, the cheaper Italian restaurant alternative, Cucina del Capitano, was replaced by Il Viaggio here. Not nearly as busy or in demand as the steakhouse, this upscale meal had a lot of server attention and extras, compliments of the chef that were thrown my way as a thank you. I got the impression fewer people were choosing to pay more for an Italian joint when it's less on other Carnival ships and didn't want to risk being disappointed. I, however, had an exceptional meal. The other specialty dining location I ate in was Bonsai Teppanyaki, a location that is always booked on the Carnival Panorama, but was twice the size on the Venezia. It allowed me an opportunity to take part in the shared dining experience. The food in the show put on by these master chefs was a lot of fun and brings everyone at the shared table together. The steak presented during this meal rivaled that of the steakhouse filet, and it wouldn't surprise me if they all pull from the same supply as their locations butt up against one another. The total cost for Bonsai Teppanyaki was $38. You could also take part in lunch at this location for $35. Across from Teppanyaki sat Bonsai Sushi, an upcharge sushi joint that I never had a chance to try but was always very busy for lunch and dinner. Two complimentary dining rooms were also open on this ship. The Marco Polo dining room, which sits on deck 3 midship and caters to set time dining passengers who have pre selected their nightly dinner slots. And then there is the Canal Grand restaurant, which spans decks 3 and 4 and is primarily used for Carnival's Your Time dining, or as I like to call it, a solo diner's best friend, where you can check in whenever you'd like via the app, request a private table, and get quoted a time. In my experience, always under 10 minutes, and be sat quickly. While both dining rooms have something unique that sets them apart, one thing I really liked about Canal Grand was the fun theme of a life-sized gondola in the middle of the restaurant and top and bottom levels which looked out onto it. This restaurant is also utilized for the immensely popular Sea Day brunch, which I took part in on at least 2 sea days. Do not miss the always slammin' Eggs Benny and one of the best yogurt parfaits ever. In fact, I look forward to this parfait as Carnival serves this ingredient for ingredient during Sea Day brunch across their fleet. The Marco Polo dining room, while its theming is less flashy, I guess you could say, it is segmented up quite nicely and allows for more privacy for sections of tables than I think I've ever seen on a Carnival ship. Usually the dining rooms are wide open spaces, which can sometimes make it feel, I guess, more like a cafeteria than an elegant affair, but this dining room does offer a more intimate feel. Up on the Lido deck, you could find the included Lido Marketplace buffet, open for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a late night snack. The Lido Marketplace buffet had a lot of seating and was themed similarly to other Vista class buffets, with one major shift in decor that provided a lot more greenery and almost a park like setting, which was nice. However, the layout of the buffet islands themselves were very different. While the aft and forward sections of the buffet are identical on the Venezia, the buffet itself is pushed up against one side, which unfortunately creates major lines as passengers feel the need to have to stand single file to move along the buffet to grab selections. Other Vista class ships have buffet islands with 360 access for passengers that really prevent such crowding, and it was a huge miss to see that the design did not carry over to the Venezia. Buffet selection was average at best, and different themed dishes throughout the cruise kept newer options infused with the mainstay options. The food quality was decent, if not a little bland, and while the staff attempted to stay on top of cleanliness of the area, because the lines were really always backed up, crew would have to get in line in order to reach the passenger facing dishes and counters to clean as they walked through, like a buffet participant would, leaving things dirtier longer than they needed to be. The buffet is also where you can find Swirls, your included self-serve ice cream and frozen yogurt locations, as well as the included Carnival Deli, which is located right smack in the middle of the aft section of the buffet. Right out the back door of the Lido Marketplace Buffet is Pizzeria Del Capitano, the included late night pizza place open from 11:15 a.m. to 4 a.m. And yes, this place is in huge demand after midnight, believe it or not, as one of the only available food spots on the ship at that time. On the opposite corner of the same aft deck area, you can find the Upcharge Seafood Shack location alongside the Burano Bar for a la carte shrimp, lobster, and seafood items. Perhaps the best kept secret of the Venezia, though, when it comes to food, is the fact that this for a fee location flips to a complimentary Chinese food option around lunchtime, plated for you and offered up, by the way, some of the tastiest food of my whole cruise. Plus, seating in this area is peaceful and serene as it surrounds the aft pool with stunning wake views off the back of the ship. One of my favorite hideaway spots, especially in the evening hours. Not a lot of people back here. As mentioned a little earlier, Carnival squeezed in two staples of their brand on this ship with an included Guy's Burger joint outside the front entrance of the Lido Marketplace buffet. Only this burger joint of celebrity chef Guy Fieri has a twist to it. In keeping with the theme of Carnival fun Italian style, you can find two new Italian offerings on Guy's menu. From the pepperoni pizza burger with a mega fried mozzarella, pepperoni marinara, melty cheese, and donkey sauce, and the super melty moots, which includes super melty cheese, diced tomato, balsamic vinegar, fried basil, and donkey sauce as well. Of course, Guy's Burger Joint wouldn't be what it is without its phenomenal toppings bar that you can add to your heart's content alongside all of Guy's signature sauces. I had the pepperoni pizza burger, and it was rich, decadent, a huge mess of a burger that filled me up for most of the day. In the same location on the opposite side of the deck, you can find the replacement for what is normally Blue Iguana Cantina on Carnival ships elsewhere. Instead, here, this is called Tomadoro, an included fast food spot with a Mexican-Italian fusion menu. Still found in the spot are made-to-order burritos and tacos and toppings bar, but fused into the menu now sits a meatball hero sub and a Sicilian chicken wrap. The hero sub was a great on-the-go grab alongside the tried-and-true burritos. It's also worth noting that just like Blue Iguana Cantina, Tomadoro also hosts a little-known breakfast that I often found myself at, indulging in the perfection that is the huevos rancheros, breakfast burritos, arepas, and breakfast tacos. Seriously, I dream about those huevos rancheros all the time, and they are all made to order right in front of you. During the cruise, I met a couple who were raving about the upcharge gelato found at the Java Blue Cafe just off the Lido deck. On one night after dinner, I swung through to grab myself some. Java Blue is also your home for donuts, cupcakes, custom coffees, you name it. But the 8 flavors of homemade gelato had me savoring every sweet bite. And for $3, the 3-scoop treat is a perfect way to top off a night. Another perfect treat for an evening at sea is in the main dining room, where the Carnival signature melting chocolate cake with a scoop of vanilla ice cream is always a trusted option. Of course, I learned long ago to ask for a side of peanut butter with the dish to really elevate the savory and sweet profile even more and turn this dessert into total bliss. As I mentioned, I didn't get a drinks package on this cruise, choosing instead to pay as I went instead of paying the small fortune that a drinks package would cost me. Truth be told, I don't drink alcohol very much to begin with. I mean, an occasional drink here and there suits me just fine. And when it comes to soda, I'm Team Coke products all the way, whereas Carnival, unfortunately, is Team Pepsi. So I ordered through the Carnival trip planner the 12-pack of Diet Pepsi for my stateroom, asked my stellar stateroom steward for an ice bucket, which he kindly replenished each day, and would fill up my own travel can with the drink to take with me to lunch or dinner. That alone saved me a fortune that I chose to instead spend on things like specialty dining and a few spa services later in the trip. 2 glorious sea days flew by, and once we were out of the New York region, weather cleared up for the remainder of the trip, bringing mostly sunny days until some cloud cover during select days while touring the Bahamas. Each morning, I took advantage of Carnival's complimentary breakfast room service. As a reminder here, their normal room service menu is now an a la carte upcharge, but their breakfast room service remains included. You have to scan the QR code in your room in order to access that menu and even realize it's included. I think they're quietly hoping you don't notice, but it's still included, which I greatly respect. There is nothing like having a carafe full of fresh hot coffee alongside a croissant, some Danish, and fruit to wake up to and enjoy the morning sunrise with. I will say, more often than not, room service would deliver the coffee fine, but would confuse my ask of orange marmalade jam for orange juice. It happened enough that it made me laugh. I mean, no harm, no foul here, but they confuse the two a lot. Of course, I always tip room service attendants, even on items deemed complimentary. They work hard, and yes, of course, they deserve it. I spend my sea days enjoying stage shows in the luxurious theater, listening to live music in performance venues around the ship, especially right downstairs from my room in the gondola lounge, where I became quite fond of a solo performer named Ben Trail, who grew a significant following during our journey. He was always up for requests, was unintentionally funny, and did every set by himself. A true talent. Another thing I really enjoyed on sea days were the matinee shows for stand up comedy in the Punchliner Comedy Club. I don't know what it is about the Punchliner Comedy Club across their fleet, but Carnival just does stand up better than any other brand, and they also rotate comedians throughout the cruise, so you have somebody new to look forward to. I would sometimes even attend their PG shows as well as their mature shows just to see how funny they could be with restrictions, and I'm always falling over with laughter regardless. Some of the other things worth doing on the Venezia on sea days are the ropes and obstacle course on the top deck of the ship, if you are feeling adventurous, that is, or even do some mini golf if that better suits your pace. You can be adventurous and head over to Carnival Waterworks with their various water slides. The outdoor exercise equipment is always an option, or the indoor gym as well. They tend to run trivia games and movies during the day, with movies under the Lido deck at night for those who are interested. You just need to refer to your daily schedule on the Carnival Hub app to see which are being offered and when. Of course, I always like to download a few audiobooks or a favorite playlist and head up to the adults only included Serenity deck, where I grab a lounger or clamshell seat before ordering a drink from the Serenity bar and sit back to take in the views from high atop the front of the ship. The Serenity area is one of the most expansive and well laid out Serenity decks I have enjoyed on Carnival, and even on sea days, I was able to find a place to call my own for a while. A definite must do for anyone looking for total relaxation. On day 3, we were arriving to the port of Miami. It was the first time the Carnival Venezia docked at the port and was a historic occasion. Even though it was very early in the morning when we sailed in, I was up on my balcony watching just the spectacular sunrise over the city, which at some points it felt like I could reach out and touch. It was so close. During this sail-in, I also noticed several drones racing around and above the ship capturing footage, and it didn't occur to me until later how historic the day was for the Venezia as a first-time port until I saw those drone videos on mainstream news outlets across social media. After we docked, I headed off for my first of many excursions this trip and thought this outing entitled Top 10 Best of Miami might be a nice way to see the city and all the things that made it special in a quick fashion. What I did not expect was to fall in love with the pristine beauty of the town and the deep cultural roots in places like Little Havana, where we mingled with locals, received some complimentary shots of Cuban coffee, which is like candy if you've ever had Cuban coffee, witnessed hand rolled Cuban style cigars be made, and took in the vibrant spaces in and around the area. Our tour guide, Michael, by the way, hands down the best tour guide I've ever had on any excursion before. He was hysterical, filled with information, beaming with pride for his city, dripping with just the right amount of sarcasm, and had a natural aura of just coolness about him. He was the youngest tour guide I've ever had as well, and it felt like I was being shown a city by like a buddy of mine instead of an official tour guide. His good humor and chill vibe carried over into our experience and made for one of the most enjoyable excursions I've ever had. From Little Havana to Miami Beach and into the Miami Arts District, I was impressed by the amount of design and art across the community that seemed to express each neighborhood's personality. If you ever get a chance to take a tour of Miami as an excursion, be sure to do it. I almost didn't and was originally going to stay on the ship since it was just another American town in the back of my mind, but it turned out to be an unexpected joy. And if you're in the area, be sure to look up tour guide Michael. You can find him on social media at Michael the Tour Guide. This 5-hour excursion, by the way, took us everywhere, and I paid a total of $69.99 for it. By mid-afternoon, I was back on the ship and grabbed myself some food from Tomodoro and went back to my stateroom to watch some TV. when suddenly the power went out and the whole ship went dark. While we were still in port and not everyone was back yet, I don't think this could have happened at a better time, but I wondered what could cause that and would it happen again? Moments later, an overhead announcement came from the captain, frantically telling us that everything's fine and they'll update us again as soon as they have more information. As he spoke, it sounded like every alarm on the bridge was going off simultaneously. I moved out to my balcony, and staff nor passengers seemed to be concerned. Again, we were sitting at the port, so I continued enjoying my lunch when around 5 minutes later, the power was restored. The captain followed it up with an apology for the disruption and mentioned the crews were heading to some elevators on board that were stuck to get them back in order. And that was that. We never had another power issue. But for a ship as new as the Venezia and for being in port, not even functioning on full power, I'm still confused as to what caused it. But I'm just glad we didn't face the problem again. In a matter of a few hours, though, we were back on the high seas heading to our next destination of Nassau, Bahamas. We arrived in Nassau the next morning. It was cloudy but warm and scheduled to clear up throughout the day. I was glad to see the new full terminal village was now open in Nassau after the Bahamian government sunk millions into building out their Nassau piers to accommodate multiple cruise ships at a time. The new terminal village was still in creation mode during my last visit in late 2022, but now was a beautiful new addition to what has become one of the world's busiest cruise destinations. Today's excursion had me up and off the ship early as I was headed to swim with the pigs. I'd seen it in videos and heard about it from friends, but now I was going to get to do this myself after a catamaran boat ride through the tropical blue waters of Nassau off the white sand of some of the most famous homes and resorts on the planet. We were arriving about 20 minutes later. Something else I was really glad to find out was that the Pigs Beach excursion is done in conjunction with Pearl Island. Pearl Island was a stunning little sliver of paradise I visited back in late 2022 at a time when they were still building and developing some of the space on the island. This time, I would be getting to enjoy Pearl Island 2.0 while I waited for my quick boat ride over to swim with the piggies. I must say, the growth of Pearl Island to accommodate more visitors while still maintaining its intimate and more huggable atmosphere really made me smile. We even docked at an entirely new entry portal to the island, complete with an island host who couldn't be happier that we were there. The island has some white sand beaches to it, suntan on, beautiful seating, swings, tables, included swim gear to use in the water, a lighthouse lookout tower you can go up into, upcharge snorkeling, an iguana zoo filled with some sunbathing Bahama iguanas, as I like to call them, and a restaurant which included lunch. In no time, our group was called to take that transport across the water channel to the nearest beach where pigs were ready to swim with us. After a brief safety presentation on how to get pigs to come to you and how to have them leave you alone, we were handed our food, piggy snacks, and the whole pen of pigs came running our way. The pigs do legitimately swim, which seems to surprise people. They swarm around us as they stick their snouts up to smell where the food is and come for anyone who puts their hands out with the snacks on a stick. I waited until most of the other people around me were done and then started to put my food out for the pigs to enjoy. And when you are the last person to have food, you become very popular. The entire event lasts about an hour and ends with beach time, playing and taking photos with the pigs. After a trip back to Pearl Island to relax for a while with some lunch, it was time for us to head back to port and board the ship. The entire excursion lasted 5.5 hours and was a total cost of $139.99. Again, that included lunch. After returning to the ship, I took a shower and headed to the Cloud9 Spa on Deck 12, where it was my time for a massage treatment. I will often book a massage or two while on a cruise, mainly because they are the ultimate form of pampering and relaxation. And by the way, the earlier you book before a cruise, the cheaper the massage treatments tend to be, and then they ramp up in pricing the closer you get to your departure date. The following morning, we arrived at Half Moon Cay, a Carnival-owned private island that requires the ship to anchor offshore and for tender boats to take you to and from the island itself. On the island, you can snorkel, ride bicycles, do some kayaking, horseback riding, and more, all for a fee, of course, that you book before you even take your cruise. The island itself is a 2-mile beach and provides a complimentary barbecue lunch. You'll need to bring your towels and sunscreen, though. There's also some free chairs and loungers that you can go ahead and take for yourself, but there are some really large extra fee cabanas. And when I say extra fee, I mean big money cabanas along this beach. Keep in mind, there really is no shade on the beach area, and when it is blazing hot, like it was when I visited, um, you don't end up spending much time there. I certainly didn't. I walked through once and about ready to pass out. It was so hot. So, under more comfortable conditions, I think it'd be a great way to spend an afternoon. It is a highly rated beach, and therefore I can't wait to go back when it's not so unbearably warm. The next day, we rolled into Freeport, Bahamas, and it was another early start as I was heading to the Grand Lucayan Resort Getaway with lunch. I learned quickly that Freeport had only just reopened to cruise ship tourism a few months prior and had been essentially shut down for the last several years after a hurricane destroyed many of their top resort properties. Their port terminal also completely in ruin at one point, and their airport limiting air travel in and out to very small planes only. This recovery was further delayed due to the pandemic halting travel entirely. Being the first real season of visitors to the island in years made us very popular with the locals who were thrilled to see us back. After a quick open air bus ride from one side of the island to the other, we had arrived to Grand Lucayan Resort, the only main resort hotel operating along the coastal strip during our visit. The Grand Lucayan was in far better shape than what we saw elsewhere on the island, and at check-in provided our group with drink and lunch vouchers for the day. There were less than 70 visitors at this property, from my estimation, and we had the run of the place, really. The infinity pool and loungers, the hot tubs, the white sand beach that stretched for miles, the volleyball, the shuffleboard, the snorkeling, all included. As mentioned, this island had been largely depressed for the last few years, and it was kind of surreal walking along the beachfront beyond the Grand Lucayan as mega resort after mega resort were shuttered, having been given up on. The good news is that just down the road from here, Carnival is investing millions into a new private port stop they're calling Celebration Key and are set to open it in 2025, bringing more revenue and jobs to an island that definitely needs it. It was a very relaxing day on a really quiet slice of paradise. And while the clouds looked ominous, it never rained and stayed in the mid to upper 70s the entire time, making it very pleasant. The hospitality and scenery was ideal, and after enjoying a refreshing Bahama Mama and a quick bite to eat, it was time to board our bus back to the port. The entire excursion lasted 4 hours total and was a cost of $99.99, again, having included lunch and a drink. Wi-Fi at the resort was also complimentary, if you happen to be interested in that. And worth mentioning is that the Freeport docking area for ships also has a port marketplace attached to it for all of your last-minute souvenir needs. By the time we were moving out of port for sail away, we were surrounded by blue skies and picture-perfect sunshine. It was a fitting send-off of our tour of the islands of the Bahamas. The next 2 days were dedicated to being at sea as we ventured back to New York City. Never did it feel like the seas were rough on this ship. In the final 2 days, I took in more entertainment, finished reading the book I had brought with me, had one more massage, and while I was enjoying a matinee comedy show, we all felt the ship turn, and an announcement came overhead from the cruise director, who explained the bridge had spotted a raft nearby, and the crew was required by maritime law to investigate. The bridge sent a rescue boat to the scene, and no one was found. It took all but 30 minutes and was reported to the Coast Guard before we were on our way again. I spent my final evening enjoying a last specialty meal at the Fahrenheit 555 Steakhouse for one more filet and a spectacular chocolate sphere, where a warm cocoa cream custard deconstructs this treat before your very eyes. It's served with pear confit and delicate praline pâté. It is a sweet treat of perfection to end the cruise with. Early the next morning, I woke up to take in the arrival to Lower Manhattan around 4:30 a.m. The captain shared with us the day before how beautiful it was and worth seeing for yourself, and he was absolutely right. I was blown away by the gentle movement through the waterways surrounding New York City, and the immersive lights that wrapped around me during the arrival was really something that I'll never forget. Debarkation began around 7 a.m., took just about 2 hours to complete, and fortunately, it was a gorgeous, cool day in New York. I walked the 15 minutes from the port into Times Square and did some sightseeing before I called the car service to take me back to JFK for my flight home later that evening. In review, I would say that the Carnival Venezia is not only one of the most elegant and beautiful ships Carnival has in their fleet, it is one of my new favorites. Yes, the humidity created with the Lido deck retractable roof is a problem, but the ship's amenities, options for entertainment and dining, as well as the layout was something I took a real liking to. The room was one of the nicest I have ever enjoyed on a Carnival ship, and the crew were tremendous when it came to service. The Wi-Fi on board was Starlink supplied and was consistently strong whenever I used it. The itinerary of 3 stops in the Bahamas with Miami and 2 sea days to get us there and 2 sea days to get us back made this an excellent length of voyage as well. The 9-day Bahamas cruise on the Carnival Venezia with gratuities, Wi-Fi, included meals, included entertainment, and a balcony room near the mid-aft of the ship, paying for standard double occupancy, cost a total of $2,247. This booking came with a $100 onboard credit from Carnival as a promotion. This total is not including the excursions, which I detailed their own individual price, nor the specialty dining restaurants or 50-minute Swedish massages at the spa. All of those things were a la carte and extras I decided to add to my journey. If you are considering taking a solo cruise in the future to the Bahamas, Bermuda, or even to spots in the Caribbean, might I suggest doing so on the Carnival Venezia, where you can have carnival fun Italian style on a sparkling new ship with some terrific extras to add on if you so choose. Have you had a chance to cruise on the Venezia yet? I would love to hear your impressions and whether or not you would sail her again. Let me know down below. And as mentioned, I sailed a near similar designed class of ship on the West Coast called the Carnival Panorama. And if you're interested in some of the reasons why I cruised to Mexico solo on the Panorama, click on the video to the right to learn more. And we'll see you next time for another solo cruise journal.